What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Biehl. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Biehl.
Greetings, Earthlings. This is Kathy Biehl of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, and we're going to be talking a lot about the moon today, in a way. But at first, I want to update the forecast for June. In the second half of the month, actually this week, we have the solstice when the sun moves into Cancer, and that starts summer in the northern hemisphere and winter in the southern hemisphere. This is one of the big major gear shifts of the year, and the energies of this week will be running as kind of a background program for the next 3 months. And this brings a really interesting blend of the intensity that we've been experiencing and a big injection of let's go have some fun. So essentially what is happening is that the examination, the dredging up, the secrets, the revelations, the changes in perspective that we've been experiencing largely since the end of April, when Mercury, the planet that rules our communications and thoughts and communication systems, has been in an easy flow with Pluto, keeper of secrets and lord of, agent of unavoidable change. This week, Venus, our heart, our values, what matters most to us, also meets with Pluto in the same way, and we have the opportunity to reprioritize and get down to things that are absolutely important to us. There may be a strong element of irrational attraction or a tractor beam, because even though both Venus and Pluto are planets of desire, Pluto is much more on the lines of stuff that stirs in your cells and other places in your body that overrides what your mind might want. And this could be taking everything we've learned, taking what has been revealed to us, taking what we have changed our thinking about from the past couple of months, and now applying it to our relationships, our values, and things like that. The other big thing that goes from that is, or flows out of that after it, is Venus, who's involved in this little dance, changing her clothes, and she moves into the sign of Gemini, which is very airy. I want to be with lots of people. Oh, this is interesting. Oh, that's interesting. The chatting vibe getting much stronger. Mercury, the planet that rules communication, is already in that sign, and it's his home base. And Mercury and Venus will both be in Gemini for the rest of the month, and this will encourage us to lighten up, go do things. Our curiosity will be very high. And wanting to do things with a bunch of people. And while this is happening, Venus and the Sun both get a huge amplifying blast from Jupiter, the guy I say ups the ante of any action that we're involved in, and that takes us into the Cancer new moon at the end of the month, when we have the opportunity to revisit what makes us feel safe and secure, issues of home, family, nurturing, comfort, food. So a very complex rest of the month, but also one with a tremendous amount of levity and lightheartedness, finally, on tap for it. All right. You can read more about all of this in my forecast, which is up at OMTimes and also at my site, EmpowermentUnlimited.net. And now we're going to explore how your sun and moon signs influence your daily life with a special look at the moon. And we have as our guest today noted United Kingdom astrologer Lori Reid, who is the author of the new book, Your Lunar Code. Lori is a best-selling author and one of the UK's top astrologers. She's written more than 40 books, and which have been translated into 30 languages. Her features have appeared in Prima, Marie Claire, and Best magazines, and her TV work includes This Morning. Lori has also appeared on GMTV, UK Living, and BBC One's Good Morning. Thank you for being here, Lori.
Well, it's lovely, and it's lovely to meet you, Kathy.
It's lovely to meet you, too. You have such a varied portfolio on your site, all of the different topics that you have woven together into your profession. But I'd like to really focus on astrology, and could you tell us, how did you come to astrology?
Well, it goes like this, really, that I was born in the Venice region of Italy, and I remember distinctly, I must have been about 3, when my father took me out into the garden and lifted me up and pointed to the sky and said, "Now look, if ever you need me, you see that star up there, that brightest star in the sky, you just call it and speak to it, and I will know that you need me, and I will come to you." And really, that kind of set the seed in me, and it was just so fascinating looking up at the sky when you're a tiny child and it's all so vivid. And the thought that I could, almost communicate with the stars was just, well, I just took it as a normal, natural thing to do. But interestingly, I started to sort of, as I grew older, getting interested in astrology. But what really, really did it for me was because I studied languages, and a lot of them were medieval, lots of medieval English. And if you know anything about Chaucer, for example, which was one of the big topics that I studied, now Chaucer talks about his subjects in astrological terms, and it's fascinating because he could say the wife of Bath was Mars and Venus, and everybody would know what that means. Now, you talked about Venus a minute ago, and it is all about love and what have you, but if it's a joint to Mars, it gets a little bit sultry, doesn't it? And so that kind of thing really fascinated me. So I thought, I think I'm going to study this. And in studying Chaucer, I realized exactly how much astrology was part and parcel of their lives. And people knew about it. Everyday people knew about it.
Just going back a second, your experience with your father is, I think, the most magical astrology origin story I have ever heard. That's just amazing. So no wonder you were imprinted from the very beginning. And just one other question, if it's not too prying, do you know why he was so enchanted by the stars?
Yes, absolutely. Because he, first of all, you must realize that in Europe and lots of other countries, but obviously we were in Europe, a lot of the farming and household traditions are based on the cycles of the moon. For example, my grandfather would plant according to the moon. My uncles in Italy still do. My auntie, my mother, my grandmother, my aunties, they would never pickle or jar any of their produce at the wrong time of the month. If you pickle something, say onions or I don't know, beetroot or whatever you might choose, if you bottle them or put them in a jar, I'm sure you know, at at the end of the lunar cycle, when the energies are decreasing, you're least likely to develop mold in that jar. And so, they would hang up cheeses. I remember my granny's pantry, with all the cheeses hanging up, the salamis and everything, and they knew exactly when to do things like that. But the reason my father pointed to the star was because he was working abroad. And so, that's why he said, if you need me or you want me, you just tell that star and I'll know and I'll come running, which was ever such a sweet thing. But, that, as you rightly say, imprinted it in me.
My goodness. Well, all right. So then you studied languages, you studied Chaucer, you got a kind of other windows on what this symbolic language might be. How did you come to study it formally? How did you learn astrology?
Well, after that, I met a lovely Indian lady who taught me. And although I don't practice the astrologically, the Oriental. Actually, I do also like Chinese astrology, which I've written on quite extensively, but not Indian astrology. But she taught me a lot, and then I studied and studied and studied. You never stop. Come on, you know this. You never ever stop learning astrology. There's always so much. It's such a fantastic, deep subject that I would recommend anybody and everybody to learn. I mean, like the medievals, the thing was that a doctor, a physician, would not be a physician unless he was also an astrologer, because there's such a thing as, a decumbiture chart, which is the minute that you feel ill, whack up a chart and it'll tell you exactly what you're ill of and why and how long that's going to happen, and whether you're going to, it's going to be a short illness or a long illness. And it's incredible to think that in those days, doctors would not be doctors unless they knew astronomy and astrology. And that people in the street, if you said something like, Saturn is playing up, they'd know, everyone else, it's shorthand, because they'd know that you probably had a backache or something like that, Saturn and bones and spines. And so, isn't it curious that there is a whole language? You and I know it, but wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody else did too?
Yes. It would certainly make conversation a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, and so you've been translating that language for the mainstream with your work. You've been passing it on to ordinary people.
Yes, and also I was the resident astrologer for many years for the Daily and Sunday Express, and for the Daily and Sunday Star, for Prima, for Best, for many, many years. So, passing it on, and people find it absolutely fascinating. Don't you find in your work too?
I find it very funny who pays attention to it. Sometimes it's the least likely people I would have expected. But I want to get back to your special interest in the moon, because you've written a number of books about the moon. And your current one is called Your Lunar Code. What was your thinking behind, all right, now I'm going to write yet another book about the moon, because I see you have easily 3 other ones.
Yes. It's because trying to sort of explain it to people that we all, we know our sun signs because we read them. Not everybody, I quite agree with you. A few people always surprise you. They pretend they don't know, and then their wives come up and say, "Do you know, he sneaks a look at your stuff every day, but he won't say." So it is astonishing. It's astonishing as well that, for example, as I mentioned, farmers, but there are whole vintners in Europe and I'm sure elsewhere who really look at the lunar movements to bottle their wines, to get fermentation and fizz naturally into their wines. So what did I want to do? I wanted to tell people how influential the moon sign is, because people will know generally their sun sign, whether you're a Gemini or a Sagittarian or a Libran, but they don't recognize the importance of the moon sign. And whenever I cast a chart, birth or for whatever reason, whether it is for health, whether it is for business, whether it is for a marriage, the first thing I will look at is where the moon is. And that's the first thing that I look up every morning. Where is the moon today? Because that tells you about your feelings. It tells you about the nature of the day. It tells you, well, it really gives you an insight into the energies and the flow and what kind of events you can expect today. So we're all born with a lunar sign, but it's not as easy to know which you are unless you look it up. And this book will show you, you sort of work on a chart and you find out what your moon sign is. So
I found that intriguing because often someone will just say, here's a website where you can go look it up. But instead, you have a really intriguing method of finding it that does involve 3 charts. Can you walk us through that briefly?
Yes. Curiously, or not curiously, because as you know, the stellar picture up in the sky really is a great big clock. And you'll find that cycles repeat themselves. For example, the moon works on a 19-year cycle, which is known as the metonic cycle. And so every 19th year, it goes back to exactly the same spot again, and it begins a new cycle for 19 years. So these can be plotted. These signs can be plotted. So I'm turning my page now to the chart. So in the first chart, you'll see rows of birth years, and I know that I start with 1958. I could have started, from 1900 and beyond, but it's all about space, isn't it? Space on the page. And maybe if we were to reissue it, we certainly would put more dates in, because people do come up to me and say, well, wait a minute, I was born before 1958. What about me? But I'm explaining this 19-year cycle because you won't lose out. Because if you're born before 1958, along that line, you just go back 19 years, and you can do that with every line. So the first chart really maps where the moon is on the first day of June in any month in any year, starting at 58, of course, according to this book, although, as I say, we could have started earlier, and hopefully we will do. So, for example, if you were born, let's say 1980, and if you were born, let's say in August, so you scroll across with your finger and you go from 1980 and you scroll across to August, and August the 1st, if I got my ruler out and I wasn't making a mistake, 1980, August the 1st, the moon is in Aries. Then you go to the next chart, and this adds then you look at your date of birth. So if you were born on the 30th, for example, it shows you how many signs to add on from that. So if you were born, if you look at the 1st of August, the moon was in Aries. you go forward a sign, because on the 30th you see that you add one sign, so you add on the next sign, which is Taurus. So you would be, your moon would be in Taurus. So that's how it works.
And then people can use that information to go through and read the section that's about their moon.
Exactly. And then I describe what you would be like and what your moon sign tells you about you, or you could do it about your partner or your boss or your mom.
I'm going to interrupt right now to take our first break. Everyone, please hang on, and you'll learn more about figuring out what your moon means in your chart.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again, empowermentunlimited.net.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer break
because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with astrologer Lori Reid, author of Your Lunar Code. And right before the break, we were talking about the portion in the book that gives explanations of each moon sign. And I noticed that you have some very interesting and helpful ways with just a little bit of information. You impart actually a lot, or with just a little bit of words. An emotional keynote, a description of each sign as friend, parent, how they operate in the workplace, in life, and actually even one adjective for the nature of the heart for each sign. And a lot of these struck me as, well, yeah, that makes sense. Gemini, playful. Capricorn, dependable. Scorpio, passionate. I was surprised to see Aquarius, courageous. Could you explain that?
You don't agree?
Oh, no. I have other experiences of people with Aquarius, like friend to the world, maybe, is the way I've experienced it. But
Yes. I know quite a few Aquarians. And in terms of courageous, I think that they would strike out to help somebody in need. I mean, they do quite incredible things. They're very social people, aren't they? and particularly so when it's the moon, because we haven't quite really told our listeners why the moon is so important and what's the difference between that and the sun sign.
Please do.
So the sun sign is very much your external persona. That's what people see when you walk into a room. Well, they actually see your rising sign, but that's a different story. But basically, you come across as a Leo, you know, with flowing hair and an upright gait, or you with a Gemini, you know, you can tell because their eyes are all over the place and they fidget and they can hear 5 or 6 conversations going on all at once. They're quite amazing people. But the difference is with your moon sign, the moon sign is the private you. It's the secret you. It's the you that you don't really show on the surface. It's the part of you that explains your desires, what you like, what makes you feel comfortable. It tells us all about your emotions. It describes your moods, your reactions, your needs, your personal sensitivities, how you express your feelings. It tells about those innermost needs and desires and how you relate to others and how you behave when you're in love. So these are the things, some of the things that you might want to keep private and keep personal. But for example, it may be that, you know, people look at you and think you're, and say they know that you're a Capricorn, a bit cool on the outside. But if you have a Piscean moon, for example, you yearn for people to look after you. Whilst your sun sign says Capricorn and very adept and businesslike, really, if you've got a Pisces moon, they don't realize how inside you're screaming for somebody to put their arms around you. So that's the kind of thing that you learn when you discover your moon sign and what it means.
I have found that you have to get to know someone really well before you'll see their moon sign. People tend to be, unless the moon is on the ascendant, unless it's just right there in your face.
Yes.
The best example of that was someone who was an acquaintance that I had known for a long, long time, who was a very prim and quiet person, and she finally had me do her chart. She had moon in Scorpio. I went, well, that explains everything. You are the most private person on the planet.
Yep. I know. I know a person like that. I think we all do.
So how might you have designed this so that this is actually very useful? I mean, throughout the whole book, regardless of what the framework is for a particular section, it strikes me that there is something extraordinarily practical. This isn't just esoteric, oh, let's have fun and think about what you might be, but it's all framed and phrased in ways that you could use. So you were starting to say before the break, you could certainly look yourself up, but of course, all the more helpful if you look up the people in your life.
Yes, that's right. Well, thank you for describing it all like that. I think it's because I've written so much for newspapers and magazines, and in doing that, you have to be able to relay your business, your thoughts, your ideas in everyday terms. So, no, although obviously I have to study the esoterics, the way that I put it across, I try and talk in everyday terms to people so that they understand things, you know, that these are such complex subjects. But I do want to get it across so that people can join in. And I do like interactivity with my work. I always try and put in a chart or, you know, something or other that you can really sort of feel part of, because I like books like that. So I write the kind of book that I would like to read.
Makes sense to me. Now, in addition to information about how each moon sign works in a personality, you have a section that harkens back to what you were talking about at the beginning of our conversation, and that is timing. And I find this part in some ways novel compared to how a lot of information is presented, at least in the U.S. You actually break it down in a big categories of activities that are appropriate when the moon is waxing, activities that would be well suited when the moon is waning. Could you elaborate on that? The sorts of things people might.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I could actually, and in some of my other books, I go into greater depth by taking, first of all, the phases of the moon. As we said, you know, the two weekly, the waxing and the waning. The waxing is from full moon, from new moon to full, from new moon to, I'll get there in a minute. As it grows, the moon grows. That's the first fortnight. And then from full moon back to new moon is the waning time. Now, that can govern all areas of life. So I could break it down to talk about mind, body, and health, for example, and what are the best activities to do during the waxing fortnight as opposed to the waning fortnight. And then I could look at finances. You know, when do you invest? When should you save? What's best to buy? For example, if you go out to look for a pair of boots, and you know, sometimes you can go to the mall, you can walk all around, you absolutely die on your feet, and you don't find a pair of boots. Well, it's because you went at the wrong time. If you go when the moon is in Pisces, you're bound to find a brilliant pair of boots because the moon, Piscean moon, governs footwear. So if you know something like that, you can tailor your activities to those particular times when you're more likely to have success. In terms of, let's say, health and well-being, if you want to pluck your eyebrows, let's say, oh, ouch, it hurts. But if you pluck your eyebrows at the time of the full moon, the hair will come out ever so much quicker and easier. So, you know, if somebody's going off to have a Brazilian, I would say, well, go around the time of the full moon. It won't sting quite so much. There are other things, you know, sort of more important. When to have a sale. Now, if you have a sale at the time of the new moon, your products aren't going to fly off the shelf. But have it at the time of the full moon when people go a little bit doolally and are thrilled with any bargain they can get. You'll soon sell all your stuff. Dieting. Diet during the waning moon. And also prune your garden during the waning moon, because those are the times when you reduce, everything reduces, the sap is lowering. So if you prune a tree or you dig out your ivy, you're not going to stimulate the plant to reproduce and grow faster. So knowing these sorts of things, starting a saving scheme during the waxing fortnight when the moon is growing, it's all part of seeing growth. Starting a new project at the time of the new moon will see it grow and develop with greater ease. I'm not saying, you know, it's a cinch, it's easy, it'll be done, but you're working with the tide. You're not working against nature. You're working with nature. Nature, shown by the moon, if it's growing, do all those things you want to grow. Have your hair cut during the waxing period, and your hair will grow back abundantly. have it cut during the waning fortnight, and you could probably eke out another week before you need to fork out going to the hairdresser again, because it won't grow back quite as quickly.
All of this fits with the common wisdom of the new moon being a time that you make intentions or plant metaphoric seeds, and the full moon being a time of release, or seeing culmination and release, I guess, and sometimes harvest. Interesting. And you've put it into extremely practical, worldly descriptions, which certainly belies someone who's written for mainstream media. You know what people are interested in. And that is also in your section on making the most of the lunar trends, when you have descriptions of things that are optimal for the moon being in specific signs, and you take it through the zodiac, you actually put categories for what to buy and what to wear.
And we haven't even started on sex, have we? When is the best time? When are you most fertile?
Please, elaborate.
Yes. When are you at your most fertile? When are more babies born? When are more babies made? Again, you know, we suspect the full moon at this. But the full moon is also a time when more crimes are committed, usually because I don't know, there's something about alcohol that gets potentized, as indeed we get potentized. Again, I go back to the full moon, but, you know, that's the time when people go a bit nutty. they, you know, one drink almost quadruples in your behavior. And so police have said that there is more crime at the time of the full moon. But, you know, I think we go back to sex, which is an interesting topic. And I think you'll find that people get a little bit more, shall we say, raunchy at certain times like that. That's very fascinating. That's an interesting study, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm wondering if it depends on what your moon sign is as to what might be the time that is most optimal for you, if there's something kind of across the board.
Yes, I think it is it's generally across the board. I would say I'm sort of generalizing here. But as you pointed out, with Scorpios, they're deep. They are, I mean, particularly a Scorpio moon, my goodness, that is forceful. That really, really is forceful. And if we're talking about love and sex and marriage, for example, a Scorpio moon, they can be very jealous people, you know, and it takes a very patient partner to understand the depth, the labyrinthine depth of a Scorpio moon. Whereas if you have a Gemini moon, they're all friends, and they might be more flirty. I don't think they mean too much harm, but they just enjoy the sort of social aspects of relationships. Aquarius, they're more friends. They just like the friendship, don't they? There's something a little bit cooler about the Aquarian moon. And Sagittarius, well, they like to roam a bit. They like to be given quite a bit of rope, and give them rope and they'll come home again, you know. So we could go through all of the moon signs, which of course I've done in Your Lunar Code for people to enjoy and relish and see, and then and see how their moon sign does interact with their partner, or it could be with, as I said, their boss, their dads, their mums. It can explain a lot. It can explain a lot, whereas you had question marks in your mind. Why is that person behaving like that? And if you're lucky enough to find out their moon sign, that would probably tell you why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's instinctive. It's the little kid inside of you, you know, and you're not necessarily Well, in fact, you are not logical when your moon sign is involved, right?
Unless you have a logical moon sign, which is Taurus, of course. Their feet on the ground, but they don't give up, do they? They hold on to what is theirs, and I think a little bit of jealousy comes into there. I mean, there's lots of positives, but there's always a little negative in all of the signs as well. So you
and
have
with that,
to,
I'm going to interrupt you for our second break. Okay, everyone,
Okay.
hang out with us. We'll be back very soon.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
How would you like navigational tools you can use on your own? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, and click the Shop tab. There you'll find lots of talks and guides explaining the big influences at work now, like Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. You'll also find a variety of guided visualizations for relaxing, clearing your energy, or getting to know planetary archetypes. That address again, empowermentunlimited.net.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
If I could be you,
and you could be me, for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with astrologer Lori Reid, author of Your Lunar Code, and we were, right before the break, talking some more about the moon in various signs. And before we move on to the second big section of your book, I was wondering if there's anything else you'd like to say about the moon or working with lunar cycles.
Well, it's just such a wide subject. I mean, we could talk about the influences of the moon upon life. We know that the moon, its gravitational pull is extraordinary. It pulls the tides from one side of the Earth to the other. And did you know that, I know you know, but just to say, that there are various marine creatures who and other creatures who respond to the moon. The Pololo worm, for example, comes up to the surface, and you'll see them all over the beaches. They come to reproduce on that one particular night. It's just extraordinary, the effects of the moon upon us. And of course, because we are human beings composed of so much water in our systems, we get those gravitational pulls as well. So there are times in the cycle when our energies flag a bit, and we shouldn't sort of force ourselves, because it's the natural cycle, and we should just allow ourselves to become a little bit quieter, more spiritual, allow ourselves to go internally, inside. And as I say, go with the flow. You'll find that life is so much easier. You're not sort of forcing the issue if you work with the rhythms of the moon.
Excellent advice. Excellent advice. All right. So the second part of your book focuses then on the sun sign. And so you've already said that's more of what your personality or what people see much more easily when they meet you or interact with you. And you introduce a concept at the outset that, again, is not something that I have run across too much in explanation, and it makes all the sense in the world. And that is, at the outset, advising people to pay attention to what the sign opposite the sun sign is.
Yes. Yes, because it's the other side of the coin, isn't it? It's your shadow, basically. And you can learn a lot from the other side. It's yin and yang, because you've got, let's start with Aries. Aries can be rather, how should we say, adventurous people, brusque. You know, they're sporty, they're fiery, they're full of gung-ho. And the opposite to that is Libra, and Libra is a little bit more passive. Libra is rather, how would you describe Libra? It's balanced. It likes to sort of think about beautiful things, whereas if you have Aries, they're sporty, they're out there, they don't necessarily go for comforts. Well, Libra does. For a Libran, they have to have a beautiful environment. Working in some sort of grotty place is not conducive to their nature. Whereas Aries, well, I don't think their surroundings matter very much as long as they get the job done. Now, to sort of marry the two together, to learn one from the other, enriches both of them. So an Aries could learn to appreciate a bit of a softer, more aesthetic way of life, and maybe Librans can be a bit more spontaneous, because Librans can sit on the fence, can't they? Lovely people they are, but they find choosing quite tough. You know, is it this, is it that? Oh, I don't know. And they often sort of just sit there and sort of confuse themselves, whereas Aries will go charging in, and regardless of the consequences. So maybe Aries could steal a leaf out of the Libran book and learn to just think a bit more cautiously before they go marching in where angels fear to tread. And Librans could learn to be a little bit more spontaneous. So that's how it would work.
So anyone going through the book could then read the part about their opposite sign and see how that might have played out in their life. I do note that you talk about elemental sympathies. You describe how different elements get along or don't get along, and that seems to be a factor in the cosmic compatibility charts that you have for each sign. And I have to say, I love the wording. Pisces, fire signs can boil you dry. Yeah, I can see that. Aries, water signs leave you floundering in the deep. It's all very clever, and it's in a way that would grab someone's attention quite easily, I think.
Thank you.
So,
I mean, if you... Go on, sorry.
No, I was just saying, I applaud you on that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I do see it visually like that, because if we take the earth signs, you know, of Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn, they're very stable and practical people, generally busy, but they are earth. think about Earth. What is Earth? Earth is rock. It can be a brick wall. Earth can be, if we didn't have the soil, we wouldn't have anything to grow. Now, match that with a fire, as you pointed out, which would be Aries or Leo or Sagittarius. Put fire on Earth and it'll destroy all the vegetation. Sometimes we do need a bit of fire to burn off the old vegetation, but we certainly don't want a rampaging fire. However, put a water sign with Earth, which would be Cancer and Scorpio and Pisces, and what do you get? You get fertility, because earth and water mix, and you get growth, you get plant life, you get vegetation, you get beautiful flowers and vegetables. Put an air sign with water, so the air would the three signs that are air is Gemini and Libra and Aquarius. What do you get if you blow air into water? You get bubbles. So you get froth. So it could be fun if you're having a party to have a bit of froth. And yes, together they could make scintillating frothiness and fun. But on the other hand, it blows away, doesn't it? So ideally, you want water to complement earth, and you want, fire to complement air. If you have fire and water, the fire can put out the water. The water can put out the fire, and the fire will dry out the water. So you need to think about these fundamental elements, which was something that our, the sort of that was known in Chaucerian time. The elements was part and parcel of their learning and their understanding, and they would know all about the fundamental elements.
There's one thing I want to ask you about really quickly before we run out of time, and that is you have at the back, working with the Wheel of Time, with ways for figuring out the best months for certain types of activities based on your own sign. Can you talk about that briefly?
Yes, you do need to know what time of day you were born. That is the bit that's difficult. I think in America you have your time on the birth certificate, which is good, because once then you build up your birth chart, you'll know exactly where your first house, your rising sign is, and then using this Wheel of Time, you can work out a month after your birthday, 2 months after your birthday, 3 months after your birthday, the kind of issues that are likely to come up, and you can get ahead of them. For example, it might be that two months after, you might have to really look at your financial situation, so you can get ahead of it like that, or you need to sort of work harder on your health 5-6 months after your birthday. So this is a really neat trick to find out what sort of issues are likely to come up and to prepare yourself.
It's just another way that there are so many different angles for extraordinarily practical information and practical tools in this little book. So, and it's already out, correct? It was published earlier this year?
Yeah, last week.
Last week.
Oh, this Tuesday gone. Yes.
Tuesday.
Where are we? Yes.
Brand new. All right. Your Lunar Code. And it's available internationally.
Yes.
Correct. All right. And where can people find you?
Well, I am a bit of a recluse, but if they do want to get in contact, I do have a website. And they can try me on my website, Lori Reid.
.co.uk?
That's me, yes.
All right, LORIREID.co.uk. Right,
yes.
And you have, you also have another book that's still available about the moon. Is that Moon Powers?
I have, I can't remember. There's Moon Magic, whether you can still get Moon Magic. Moon Power?
I didn't. Moon Power I saw on Amazon.
Yes, possibly. I'll have to look at my bookcase to see.
All right. Well, at any rate, you have many other books, and there are some.
Yes.
Some on Chinese astrology, and then you also are very interested in the hand.
Yes, hand analysis is a deep subject, and I've written quite a lot on that. But I've written on color psychology. I've written on all sorts of anything that will help you to understand yourself more. It's all about the psychology of the individual.
Well, I thank you so much for having talked with us today. And again, everybody, lorireid.co.uk. And thanks so much again, Lori. And I look forward to people giving feedback about the book. For everyone who's listening, remember that you can find my forecasts at OMTimes.com and also at my site, empowermentunlimited.net. And do you have any parting words for us before we ring off, Lori?
I do.
Please.
It's been an absolute delight to speak with you. I've had such fun. This has been excellent and great, and it's lovely to be able to talk to your people, and I hope they enjoy the book.
Well, thank you so very much. Yes, it has been fun, and I think we need to compare charts when we get off, because it does seem like there has been a fair amount of fire going on in this conversation. So, all right, everyone, go learn what your moon sign is. Look up everybody you know, and come back in a couple of weeks, and we'll just continue with this. Thanks, everyone. Be safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.